An oceanic climate is the climate typical of the west coast at the middle latitudes of most continents, and generally features warm summers and cool winters, with a relatively narrow annual temperature range. It typically lacks a dry season, as precipitation is more evenly dispersed throughout the year. It is the predominant climate type across much of northern Western Europe, parts of the Appalachians, portions of southwestern South America and small areas of Africa, in southeast Australia, and New Zealand, as well as isolated locations elsewhere. Under the paragraph PPEN climate classification, the typical zone associated with the oceanic climate is CFB, although it includes subtropical highland zones not usually associated with marine climates. Often, parts of the Csb Mediterranean or dry summer subtropical zones are not associated with a typical Mediterranean climate, and would be classified as temperate oceanic, except dry summer patterns meet Köppen's minimum CS thresholds. Other climate classification systems, such as Trewartha, place these areas firmly in the oceanic zone. Some tropical places feature an oceanic climate due to their high altitude and also from the humidity from the tropical zones. Examples: Tulkarm, Ecuador; Bogotá, Colombia; New Warolea, Sri Lanka. Properties: climates near the ocean generally have warm summers, and cool winters. They are characterized by a narrower annual range of temperatures than are encountered in other places at a comparable latitude, and generally do not have the extremely dry summers of Mediterranean climates. Oceanic climates are most dominant in Europe, where they spread much farther inland than in other continents. Oceanic climates can have much storm activity as they are located in the belt of the stormy westerlies. The annual range of temperatures is smaller than typical climates at these latitudes due to the constant stable marine air masses that pass through oceanic climates, which lack both very warm and very cool fronts. Similar climates and thermal range are also found in tropical highlands even at considerable distance from any coastline. Generally, they fall into paragraph PPEN climate classification CFB or CWB. The narrow range of temperatures results from the slight thermal range of temperatures between seasons characteristic of tropical lowlands. Altitudes are high enough that some places have at least 1 month cooler than 18 degrees Celsius and do not qualify for grouping in the true tropical climates. This variation of the oceanic climate is termed a subtropical highland climate. Unlike the norm in true oceanic climates, subtropical highland climates may have a marked winter drought. Agricultural potential in both oceanic climates and subtropical highland climates is similar. Precipitation. Precipitation is both adequate and reliable throughout the year in oceanic climates, except in certain tropical highland areas, which would have tropical or humid subtropical climates if not for the high altitude making them cooler. Under some variations of the paragraph PPEN classification system, parts of the Pacific Northwest and south-central Chile are classified as having a Mediterranean climate due to markedly drier summer months. Despite the CSB designation, these areas are generally considered oceanic, rather than Mediterranean, due to the generally extended months of rain and cloudy conditions that these locations experience outside the summer months. Seattle is an example of this. Between October and May, Seattle experiences high rainfall and is mostly or partly cloudy 6 out of every 7 days. In most areas with an oceanic climate, for the majority of the year precipitation comes in the form of rain. However, during the winter, despite their C classification, the majority of areas with this climate see some snowfall annually. Outside of Australia, South Africa, the majority of New Zealand and tropical highland locations, most areas with an oceanic climate experience at least one snowstorm per year. In the polluted locations of the oceanic climate zone, snowfall is more frequent and commonplace. Temperature. Overall temperature characteristics vary among oceanic climates. Those at the lowest latitudes are nearly subtropical from a thermal standpoint, but more commonly a mesothermal regime prevails, with cool, but not cold, winters and warm, but not hot, summers. Summers are also cooler than in areas with a humid subtropical climate. Average temperature of warmest month must be less than 22 degrees Celsius and that of the coldest month warmer than a 3 degrees Celsius, although American scientists prefer 0 degrees Celsius in the coldest month. Paluid of the latter is a zone of the aforementioned subpolar oceanic climate, with long but relatively mild winters and cool and short summers for 1 to 3 months. Examples of this climate include parts of coastal Iceland in the northern hemisphere and extreme southern Chile and Argentina in the southern hemisphere. Examples: Ushuaia and Punta Arenas. Locations: Ireland and Great Britain experience a typical maritime climate, with prevailing southwesterly winds from the Atlantic Ocean. Although the west coast of Alaska experiences a maritime climate, the absence of an equally significant warm Pacific current in the upper mid-latitudes means that these regions are generally colder in winter, with more precipitation falling as snow. The oceanic climate is prevalent in a good portion of Western Europe and the European part of northern Turkey. The oceanic climate exists in an arc spreading across the northwestern coast of North America from the Alaskan Panhandle to northern California, in general the coastal areas of the Pacific Northwest. It includes the western parts of Washington and Oregon, the Alaskan Panhandle, western portions of British Columbia, and northwestern California. In addition, some East Coast areas, such as Boone, North Carolina, Block Island, and Cape Cod, have a similar climate. A significant portion of oceanic climate exhibited in North America features a drying trend in the summer, thus falling under the dry summer subcategory explained below. The only noteworthy area of maritime climate at or near sea level within Africa is in South Africa from Mossel Bay on the western Cape Coast to Plettenberg Bay, with additional pockets of this climate inland of the eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal coast. Interior southern Africa and elevated portions of eastern Africa and Mozambique also share this climate type. It is usually warm most of the year with no pronounced rainy season, but slightly more rain in autumn and spring. The only significant areas where this climate is found at or near sea level in Asia is on the Black Sea coast in northern Turkey, in small pockets along or near the Caspian Sea in Azerbaijan and in small pockets along or near the Tsugaru Strait in northern Japan. The oceanic climate is prevalent in the more southerly locations of Oceania. A mild maritime climate is in existence in New Zealand. In Australia, the island of Tasmania, southern parts of Victoria and New South Wales, also exhibit a mild maritime climate. It can also be found along the western areas of the south coast of Western Australia. The oceanic climate is found in isolated pockets in South America. It exists in southeast central and southwest Argentina and southern Chile. Under Koeppen Geiger, many areas generally considered to have oceanic climates are classified as cool summer, dry summer subtropical climates. These areas are not usually associated with the typical Mediterranean climate, and include much of the Pacific Northwest, southern Chile, parts of southeast and central Argentina, and northwest of the Iberian Peninsula. Many of these areas would be classified as CFB climates, except dry summer patterns meet Köppen's CS thresholds, and cities such as Concepción, Chile, Seattle, Washington, Portland, Oregon, and Victoria, British Columbia can be classified as CSB. All mid-latitude oceanic climates are classified as humid. However, some rain shadow climates feature thermal rock copyright gymes similar to those of oceanic climates but with steppe-like or even desert-like scarcity of precipitation. Despite the oceanic-like thermal regimes, these areas are generally classified as mild steppe or desert climates. This milder version of steppe and desert climates are found in Washington and Oregon to the east of the Cascade Range in the United States, Patagonia in southern Argentina, the Atacama Desert in northern Chile and coastal areas in the southeastern portion of Western Australia. Varieties: Subtropical highland variety. The subtropical highland variety of the oceanic climate exists in elevated portions of the world that are within either the tropics or subtropics, though it is typically found in mountainous locations in some tropical countries. Despite the latitude, the higher altitudes of these regions mean that the climate tends to share characteristics with oceanic climates, though it also tends to experience noticeably drier weather during the lower sun winter season. In locations outside the tropics, other than the drying trend in the winter, subtropical highland climates tend to be essentially identical to an oceanic climate, with mild summers and noticeably cooler winters, plus, in some instances, some snowfall. In the tropics, a subtropical highland climate tends to feature spring-like weather year-round. Temperatures there remain relatively constant throughout the year and snowfall is seldom seen. Areas with this climate feature monthly averages below 22 degrees Celsius but above a 3 degrees Celsius using American standards. At least 1 month's average temperature is below 18 degrees Celsius. Without the elevation, many of these regions would likely feature either tropical or humid subtropical climates. These regions usually carry a CWB or CFB designation, though very small areas in Yunnan, Sichuan and parts of Argentina and Bolivia may have summers sufficiently short to be CWC with fewer than 4 months over 10 degrees Celsius, though no records exist for such stations. This type of climate exists in parts of East, South and Southeastern Africa, the exposed areas of high Atlas, some mountainous areas across southern Europe, sections of mountainous North, Central and South America, some mountainous areas across Southeast Asia, and parts of the Himalayas. It also occurs in a few areas of Australia, although average high temperatures during summers there tend to be higher and the climate dry than is typical of subtropical highland climates, with summer maxima sometimes exceeding 40 degrees Celsius. Subpolar variety. Areas with subpolar oceanic climates feature an oceanic climate but are usually located closer to polar regions. As a result of their location, these regions tend to be on the cool end of oceanic climates. Snowfall tends to be more common here than in other oceanic climates. Subpolar oceanic climates are less prone to temperature extremes than subarctic climates or humid continental climates, featuring milder winters than these climates. Subpolar oceanic climates feature only 1 to 3 months of average monthly temperatures that are at least 10 degrees Celsius. As with oceanic climates, none of its average monthly temperatures fall below -3 degrees Celsius. It typically carries a CFC designation. This variant of an oceanic climate is found in parts of coastal Iceland, the Faroe Islands, small sections of the Scottish Highlands, northwestern coastal areas of Norway such as Lofoten and reaching to 70° N on some islands, uplands near the coast of southwestern Norway, southern islands of Alaska and northern parts of the Alaskan Panhandle, the far south of Chile and Argentina, and a few highland areas of Tasmania, and the Australian and Southern Alps. The classifications used to this regime are CFC. Dry summer variety. Despite the fact that dry summers are a feature which differentiates CSB areas from oceanic climates, some areas of CSB climate are typically considered oceanic as opposed to Mediterranean. Technically, this version of the oceanic climate meets CAR paragraph PPEN's minimum precipitation threshold limit of 30 mm under CAR paragraph PPEN Geiger, resulting in a CSB designation. Nevertheless, due to the higher annual accumulation of precipitation and generally cloudier conditions that these regions experience in comparison to other areas with CSB climates, a number of scientists consider this climate oceanic. This is especially the case in the Pacific Northwest region of the United States and Canada, some sections of coastal Chile, some sections of the Atlantic coast of Morocco, in Galicia and northwestern Spain and in northern Portugal, where conditions are wetter and generally cloudier during the course of the year than typical CSB climates. Nevertheless, those regions have several Mediterranean Fiat Horizon, greater annual hours of sunshine than the typical oceanic domain, especially during the drier summer months, sometimes unbroken sunny stretches for weeks at a time under the dominating influence of stable high pressure. For example, cities such as Akorora ±A or Seattle have at least 2,000 hours of sunshine, while the values of the typical CFB regions are almost always below 2,000 hours. Vegetation which is partially adapted to xeric conditions. So the cork oak, a typically acidophilous Mediterranean species, and which is widely distributed in Portugal and in southern half of Galicia. In contrast, beech or birch, widely distributed in the CFB area, are not common in Iberia, mostly confined to the Pyrenees and the Cantabrian Mountains. In addition, Gary oak, typical of California, can be found as far north as Vancouver Island. Douglas fir, which is the typical species of the Pacific Northwestern forests, is very well adapted to the summer drought. Forest fires are regular in those regions due to the summer drought. See also, climate classification, temperate climate, humid subtropical climate, continental climate, subarctic climate, polar climate. References. External links: University of Wisconsin Stevens Point, Marine West Coast Climate, Epic Data Collection Online Ocean Observational Data Collection, NOAA In Situ Ocean Data Viewer Plot and Download Ocean Observations, http www.acemeuc UK Climate Maritime Climate HTML